You don't become worth $200 billion by giving away market share easily.
This is Velocitize Talks, and I'm Eric Jones. I'm here with Bill Carr, the founder and CEO of Carpe Diem. Bill, it's good to have you.
Thank you very much, Eric. Nice to be here with you.
Bill, tell us a little bit about Carpe Diem and your success for 20 years as a digital agency.
As an agency, we've always resisted the temptation to specialize. So the majority of clients that we work with all tend to share the same desire, and that's to grow. So we tend to work with high growth companies. Traditionally, we are a new media agency. It was what we first started with sort of 1990s and developed into a digital agency. And I suppose now we're a digital transformation agency. But ultimately, we are a consultancy-led dev house. So all of our projects tend to start with design sprint methodology that's been taken from Google and agile methodologies. And we use that to ensure that we create a good alignment and a good vision of a goal for what a company is trying to achieve via adapting a new digital technology or to pivot. And then we help to align the team and deliver a technical solution that will fit around that. So
we're seeing one of the greatest accelerations probably in the history of human economic history. Tell us a little bit about with this whole move, from offline to online this year, given the pandemic. Tell us a little bit about how the conversations with clients around digital transformation have changed this year.
So a lot of our clients tend to be high growth companies. So the amount of change that we've seen is kind of almost welcomed by them. They're not averse to change as a culture or an ethos. We tend to work a lot with founders. So they kind of thrive in those environments. But I suppose what we have kind of seen is that relationships have become all the more important. A lot of our clients that we've worked with prior to sort of the COVID crisis are ones that we've worked most with throughout. And I guess a lot of that is because of the relationship. I mean, we tend to try and work with companies as partners. We have long-term relationships with the vast majority of our clients, some stretching back to sort of 1999 when we started working with ASICs. So we hope to sort of continue those relationships, and it is by trying to treat ourselves as an extension of their team and a partner with them.
So imagine we're a client. Could you walk us through your 4-part process for helping a client along with your design processes?
We tend to apply what we call different lenses to the same process. So the lens might be looking at sort of acquisition, growth, pivot, increasing sales, and then the 4 steps to evolve around a collect, choose, create, and then commit phasing. So the collect phase is normally a traditional sort of discovery phase where we look at the organization, the size of the challenge or obstacles that they may have. Then we'll move into our sort of choose phase, which is really about prioritizing. I mean, with the best will in the world, we can't achieve everything quickly. So it's trying to work out which we can get the quickest results from most effectively. Then we sort of apply a create methodology, which is a really sort of fun exercise that we do with a lot of clients where it's real sort of creative thinking. It doesn't matter how wild the idea is, we work it through in sort of a stage of how might we exercises. Then ultimately we then commit to those, and we're forever saying to clients that it's far better to get started on something. We don't aim for perfection, although it's where we would like to be, but starting something is often the hardest part. So if we start something and get 80% of the way there, we're going to be leagues ahead of most of other companies that will talk about it and don't really act on it. And then we use sort of an iterative process of continuing that, of coming back and looking at insights, data-driven analysis of what is actually being delivered from the project in order to repeat the process.
Could you share with us a little, an example from one of these areas, maybe in the area of brand pivot or growth?
We've tended to work with companies from the sports industry, as I say, with ASICs, financial services, healthcare with Gamma. Gamma are probably a really good example of a company that we've worked with through that sort of growth program. We started working with them a few years ago when they were in a relatively high growth stage of the business's transition, but with obviously the COVID impact, it's become a much more aggressive growth. And we've helped them with development of virtual learning environments, a new web presence that helps to sell the efficacy of training and the efficacy of their supply of products into the healthcare industry. But it's also been a great time for work with them where their services have pretty much been business to business, so their products have been pretty much business to business, but the focus upon infection prevention control systems has obviously shifted more towards a consumer environment now with the COVID crisis. And it's really been fantastic to work with them and help change the way that they market to look more actively at how a consumer may view them as a brand.
You do a lot of e-commerce work. I wonder if you could share your perspective on shopping through online social platforms, Amazon, Google, all the way through to actually having owned e-commerce abilities on a company's website, and how you coach clients to think about those different options as they consider how to sell online.
I think if you saw sort of Jeff Bezos sort of talking to Congress recently, you don't become worth $200 billion by giving away market share easily. And if you're a company that is looking to e-commerce and grow rapidly, working with the likes of Amazon gives you a tremendous growth of market that you can achieve really quickly, and that can't be overlooked. I think ultimately in the long term, and I think you've started to see with a few brands now, is that there is a risk element involved with that. You're giving a lot of data, a lot of insights away to some of these companies, Amazon in particular, which can be a hindrance towards long-term growth. So ultimately, I think it's a good and quick route to market, something that can be sustainable. But I would expect in the years ahead that we're going to start to probably see big brands shifting away from the likes of Amazon and having their own sort of customized experience that they can achieve better via their own e-commerce store.
You're renowned for, taking a design lens to your work. In these data-driven times, why is design so important, and why can it ultimately lead to better business outcomes?
Design, to a certain extent, has been commodified. You can look at the examples of things like Wix and Shopify, where they can be very heavily template-driven, and you can apply the same thought process to a lot of other products and industries where there's a rapid period of acceleration right at the start, where we try lots of different things and real sort of creative solutions, but ultimately then we find a way that works best. And once we kind of find that way that works best, it's then about really how you create an experience around that. So we haven't for a long time designed really, really innovative, creative solutions with the likes of Flash that used to be really prominent years ago. So our design is now based more around trying to create a fantastic consumer experience and trying to make things as simple as and intuitive as possible. And that's probably a lot harder to achieve. It looks very simple, but there's a whole lot of work that goes into trying to create something that looks that simple and works that seamlessly.
How does something like WordPress help you in that endeavor?
We've used WordPress for a number of years, and one of the main reasons that we sort of adopted WordPress years ago is because for the ease of experience for users being able to manage their websites intuitively. And as that has progressed with things like Headless CMS, WordPress has evolved into that, and that's where we see the future of WordPress being ultimately in sort of a headless environment. WordPress has undoubtedly got a huge market share and will continue to expand in its service offering, but it has become more complex. So it's moved out of the consideration of just being a off-the-shelf small B2C, B2B blogging system, where it can really be utilized by enterprise now. And we have enterprise level clients that use WordPress to drive a fantastic online experience.
I wondered if you had an opinion on how WordPress actually plays in a headless environment, and are there certain native advantages that it may have over other CMSs?
I just think it gives more flexibility, more control over the design experience, which obviously relates to the earlier question. But by utilizing WordPress, you know that you've got a very strong, very well-tested back-end system, and obviously working with WP Engines, we have done for years, we know that that's well-maintained, and that's the one thing that the WordPress and our relationship with WP Engine ensures, that the back-end infrastructure is always available and as secure as it possibly can be.
What's the best piece of professional advice that you've ever been given?
Probably the same advice that I give my son, and it's to kind of welcome, or certainly to accept failure. I think being British, we probably have a bit of a different outlook to it than maybe my counterparts in the US do, as it's often frowned upon. But I'm forever encouraging him to try things, to fail things, to break, because you learn so much more from it. And on the counter side of that is not to over-celebrate your successes. It's great to enjoy your success, but you can learn a lot more from failure. So I'd say, learn fast.
And one of the questions we love asking our guests is a book that you'd like to recommend to our viewers.
There's a few. I normally have sort of 2 or 3 that I'm reading at any one point in time. I kind of drift in and out of them. The Yuval Noah Harari, if I pronounced his name correctly, the Homo Deus book, I've probably finished a few weeks back, and I'm now reading his 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, which is a brilliant book. I spend a lot of time sort of looking into technology, and it's enabling me to look back at how society uses technology, and we use a lot of that thinking in the way that we develop projects for clients. And the other book that I probably can't go without mentioning, because it's one that's probably been most influential that I've been reading, is the Darren Olian, I believe you pronounce his name, which is Super Life, which if you've watched the Netflix series Down to Earth with Zac Efron and Darren traveling the world looking at more sustainable ways of living, I would highly recommend that, because I think that'll be a bit of a big shift in the years to come.
Bill, thank you very much.
No problem at all. Thank you for having me. Best of luck in the year ahead.
Thanks.
Thank you.
That was Bill Carr, the founder and CEO of Carpe Diem.